That game was a novel. Caitlin's out, the Sun are rising, Alyssa Thomas sees everything. What's next for the Fever? Tony East of the Next and Forbes Sports and many publications. Tony is who covers the Fever is here to break it all down with us. Tony, how's it going today?
Good. I'm not used to covering the playoffs, so new experiences for me in Feverland this year.
Yeah, first playoff berth since 2016. Finishes off pretty quickly, 2-game elimination. Didn't get to take it back to Indiana. But what a game that was. Tony, where do you want to start? Because that game, there's so many different things that happened. There's so much to get into.
Yeah, I think that what stood out to me in that game, among many things, is just what the Fever and what a big lead up to the series talking point was experience, right? The Sun have been to the finals before. They have all these veterans that have been there, done that. And for all the many things you talked about with this game being so novelist, so back and forth, so many moments that you could say, like, if you were writing a game, or that was the player, that was the player, that was the play. In the final 2 minutes, all of those plays were Sun plays, right? DeWanna Bonner making a big play, their defense stepping up in a big moment, getting stops, forcing turnovers in a major way. And that's what they've been all season. They were the top defense in the regular season. They were a really tough matchup for the Fever, but the way their vets, they're reigning champs, those who have been to the finals before, their veteran coach who used to coach the Fever, all were really composed and together in those moments. You know, that was the separator to me, because the Fever were ahead late, and I think everybody thought they had the momentum. They just made this comeback, and it did not matter at all. And I think that was such a big talking point coming in, and this is something the Fever need is playoff experience for future seasons. They got it, but not in the fun way.
Not in the fun way. And it's rarely ever in the fun way, right? And this was a story with the Sun for so many years too. You do have to go through these things. I think there was a great stat Alexa Philippou came out with when she wrote her Fever feature earlier this season. We had her on last week. The Sun had a collective 222 games of postseason experience, and the Fever had 19 under their belt. Obviously, that has since shifted, but you're absolutely right, because I think the moment that could have been the moment of the game, the Fever, from basically their great start on, they have the Sun catch up to it, which is a story in and of itself. Just the Fever were not able to capitalize early on a lot of the open shots that they got, and it just gave an opening for the Sun to get back into the game. They get the lead back in the first quarter, and from that moment on, it just feels like the Fever are kind of trying to stay in there, but every time something goes right, there's a big shot on the other end, or there's a turnover, there's just something that happens. Until Caitlin Clark, with 4 minutes left, hits a huge three-pointer to put them up for the first time since the first quarter. And for a younger team, you would think that the momentum would just start going Indiana's way. Then Marina Mabrey just comes out with the dagger, just immediately answers it. And we can talk so much about how huge she's been for that team, but just her ability to play the Fever's game, to be able to say Caitlin Clark came out very spicy today. She was getting into it with DeWanna Bonner. She was getting into it with the refs. It was angry Caitlin. It was not contained. I'm trying to control things, Caitlin. Marina Mabrey loves that kind of game. She talked on ESPN before about how she would just drop 50 in rec league games just to do it. She didn't have to do it. And her mom would talk to her after, and she'd be like, well, I'm going to go ahead and do, like, she has that sort of, I get like and asshole gene, honestly, is like the best way to put it. Like there's no poetic way to put it, but it is what makes us love players like Caitlin, players like Marina. And it's why she had beef with the Connecticut Sun and Dejanay Carrington specifically before she got to this team. I love their enemies to best friends pipeline that they're on now. She is exactly one of those type of players that once, when she's not on your team, you hate her. But when she is, you love her. There's a reason they got her. It's because she's fearless. She's willing to take those shots. There are times it doesn't go in for her, but she's never going to be scared. And for her to just come out right away, like just shut down all of that Fever momentum, that Mohegan Sun Arena was starting to sound like the Gainbridge Fieldhouse. And then just, immediately after that, it was over. And then Caitlin, tries to answer back with a logo three. It misses. Temi Fagbenle gets a rebound. It's a tie game with 3 minutes left. And then after that, it really felt like it was all Fever. It was DeWanna Bonner, 5 straight points. It was assists coming from Alyssa Thomas, who had an incredible game. And is, by the way, this was a stat from ESPN too. If you go back to last postseason, she has 4 straight games of 10 straight assists. So moving forward, if she is able to keep that streak, she's going to tie with Courtney Vandersloot, who is the all-time leader in 10-game streak assists in the playoffs.
Much as I hate the in-game TV interview, I loved Alyssa Thomas's pre-fourth quarter. Like, yeah, they're just sagging off of me. I'm just going to keep passing it to my teammates over and over again. Like, so matter of fact, like, yeah, what are they doing? She said it during the game. But Mabry was such a story to me for so many reasons, because one, she was amazing in the first game and then had this close you talked about. Two, she was guarding. What was that? I've never seen Marina Mabry defend like that. Like, they could credibly put her on Caitlin Clark or Kelsey Mitchell and just give a nice thumbs up and say, this is great, which was really important to me, because before the series, a big storyline to me was what made Connecticut such a tough matchup for the Fever is Ty Harris and Dejanay Carrington have been this awesome backcourt defending the Fever, defending Kelsey Mitchell and Caitlin Clark, for my money, the best in the league. And then right away, Ty Harris gets hurt, like instantly. So this, in my head, I'm like, oh, this is potentially huge. All of a sudden, maybe Veronica Burton can step up a little bit. And she was also awesome, but maybe the Fever will actually have some openings. Their guards can get going, and they didn't. And a big part of that was the Suns' general team defense and scheme, but a big part of it was Marina Mabry guarding her ass off for 2 straight games. It was really impressive. And that was paired with what she always does, which is just like annoy you with these like slow motion jumpers in your face for 40 minutes a night. It was incredible to see her kind of turn into that player on a new team and fit in so well. And I love you love the Carrington Mabry relationship that is formed. And so even on a night like Bonner was amazing in the first game, she was not particularly accurate in game 2, even though she hit the shot that, really put it away. But, 4 for 14 for Bonner. Alyssa Thomas was awesome as always, but they needed somebody to do it. And Mabry late again, both second halves, both fourth quarters. She was tremendous. And that teetering fourth quarter has been a real strength for the Fever this year, right? I wrote a story 2 years ago about how awful the Fever were in the clutch. Like, it was pathetic. Like, I would film Lynn Dunn, like, exacerbated late games down on the floor, and they just couldn't get done. They'd be so close. This year, they were awesome in fourth quarters. They were winning those games all the time. They led the league in clutch victories in the regular season, which was such a turnaround for them and a testament to their late game offense that was just awesome all the time. And so they had another chance at it. And I thought, okay, they figured out how to do those late game stuff, but they couldn't do it. And the Sun were their perfect foil in that way.
Yeah, they actually, if you want to zoom out to the Fever and what they need to do next, I don't think that you could have had a better opponent than the Sun to point out exactly where your weaknesses are, because I think other teams in the W just wouldn't be able to keep up with the Fever. And I think that's kind of what we saw. And every time the Fever made a run, it was because the Sun just weren't picking up in transition. Like you saw it with, there's Lexi Hall layup, a Kelsey Mitchell layup early in the game. Caitlin was great with her hit-ahead passes. They call a timeout, and they start making it a half-court game. The other great adjustment that they made too was Alyssa Thomas is just like, shout out to Alyssa Thomas. She's a walking in-game adjustment. Like, she is like, I know I make too many NBA comparisons, but I'm going for it. She's like Sabonis with better defense, size, and ball handling. She's like Draymond with a legit floater and like none of the off-court stuff. Like, she's Jokic-esque in the way like that she connects both sides of the floor. She is just awesome. Like, and you saw it after that timeout too, where, and even actually earlier in the game as well, where she was like, oh, you guys are sagging off of me. I'm just going to set a screen for one of my shooters and they're going to get open. And it's such a gift to have a player like that who sees everything on the floor. And she was also this incredible transition counterpunch. Like, it was like, oh, you guys want to play fast? Okay, I'll rebound the ball. I'll dribble it up in transition and I'll just shove it down your throats. And if you guys are going to sag off of me, like, you can't really, and then I'll also start getting closer to the rim. So then you do have to apply some pressure. You can't just not guard me. I thought she was incredible. And, for the Fever front court, it was a huge challenge. It was a huge challenge for Aaliyah Boston, who I think had an excellent series. Like, I think she's one of the bright spots in this series. And of course, it's going to be a huge part of the Fever future. But, in general, like, this is a team that was built to beat Indiana.
Yeah, they were the perfect tough matchup for them. This is one of the many things that I thought, oh, this could be a dumb Tony East thing to say, but I'm going to do it anyway. I was asked before the playoffs on.
Is that a bit dumb Tony East things to say?
Yeah, just every sentence honestly could fit in that category, but I say a lot of things, so I'm going to say a lot of dumb things. But leading up to the postseason, people were talking about they could play any of three teams, right? It wasn't decided until the last day. It'd be Connecticut, but it could have been Minnesota, Connecticut, or Vegas. And then it became just Connecticut or Vegas. And I even said locally on like a radio hit, I think they would do better against the Aces, which is crazy. The Aces have won 2 championships in a row, and that's the only team the Fever didn't beat during the regular season. What am I saying? But I said it because Connecticut is this perfect matchup nightmare for them with the backcourt defense I already talked about and the front court stuff you just mentioned. That's why they had the best defense, like up and down. Alyssa Thomas connects it all because she's like a genius and is in the right spot constantly. I don't think she's ever been in the wrong position like ever in her life. That does not even basketball wise, just like in her house. If there's a fire, she's going to be right next to it, already holding the extinguisher.
You got to ask DB about this. This is a feature waiting to happen.
And so in some ways, Aaliyah Boston got better against that Bree Jones matchup. She struggled with that her rookie year. The Fever did beat the Sun once because they shot well from 3 and their transition game was really working, but that's just the toughest matchup for them. And they kind of need to know, what does it take to beat a team like that that's really well connected on defense, that makes it so we can't play our style. They're good enough to score that the Fever can't get out in transition and run and get into their offense early. They can swarm Caitlin Clark with the ball or Kelsey Mitchell with the ball and make it really hard to play in those 4-on-3 settings that the Fever have been so good at. And they can also score enough to put pressure on your defense. Depth is needed, so you can play fast all the time. When the Fever's bench was in, they played slow. And that first quarter and early second quarter stretch with their second unit was the game. They stunk for that 8-10 minutes. They could not score, right? They needed more depth to be able to play fast. They need to be able to play that style longer, and they need to be able to get enough stops to play their game. And even against a slightly above average offense in Connecticut, they couldn't get enough stops at all the whole series, right? So a lot of their flaws that we saw during the season were really exposed in this stage, and it just happened to be against a team that was, again, the perfectly challenging matchup for them. And they knew this. They knew Connecticut was good and hard to beat, but now they really know, and that's what front office people have to assess and do, because their signings from the summer, Katie Lou Samuelson, Damiris Dantas, Katie Lou didn't even play in this game, right? She didn't play much the whole series. Really, only foul trouble got her in there for game one. Dantas came alive late, but I don't think she scored until the fourth quarter. That was their other signing of the summer. I think Dantas had a good series, to be clear, but they still need to add stuff at some point, and that's fine. It's the first year they made the playoffs with this core, but they had the perfect matchup to expose their weaknesses and show that they do need a little bit to a lot, maybe more stuff to be really good, and not just like this pesky 60 who can really score.